I think we're gonna start on the 8th. Hopefully I don't need a mic.
It's all good.
All right. I missed everybody. Good to see you.
Good to have you back.
Yeah. All right. Now with the increase, we'll get down to the business so everyone can go back to our afternoon activities. Good afternoon and welcome to the November 12th, 2024 regular meeting of the Community Development Commission of Chicago. I am Gwendolyn Hatton Butler, Chairwoman of the CDC. Today's meeting is being held at City Hall, room 1103, and is also being screened by the Department of Planning and Development. The agenda for today's meeting was posted on November 7th, both on the CDC website and physically at City Hall. I will now call to order the November 12th meeting of the Community Development Commission with a call of the roll. Commissioners, when your name is called, please respond by saying present. Please note this vote will be used to establish the roll call for subsequent items. You have a roll call sheet? Maybe we have a roll call.
You
sheet?
should have one.
We should have one on the- Oh, I'm out of practice. So sorry. I got it.
You got it.
I'm out of practice. Okay. Roll call. Vice Chair Latasha Thomas. Present. Secretary Grace Chan McKibben.
Present.
BPD Commissioner Sierra Boatright.
Present.
Commissioner Robert Buford. Commissioner Dwight Curtis.
Present.
Commissioner Leslie Davis. Commissioner Jacqueline Gomez. Commissioner Cornelius Griggs. Commissioner John Sayas. We have a quorum. The first item on our agenda requests approval of the minutes from our previous meeting held on October 8th. The commissioners have had an opportunity to review the minutes, and if there are no corrections, I move passage of this item by the same roll call vote previously used to establish quorum. Are there any corrections or objections to the minutes? For purposes of this vote, I'm going to abstain because I was not at the October 8th meeting. Vice Chair Thomas graciously chaired that meeting in my absence. Thank you so much. Commissioners, for the first item of new business. So hearing no corrections or objections, back to the minutes, the motion is approved. Commissioners, for the first item of new business on today's agenda, the Department of Planning and Development is seeking authority to negotiate a redevelopment agreement with Field Building Revitalization Partners, LLC, or a related entity for redevelopment of the property located at 135 South LaSalle Street in the LaSalle Central Tax Increment Financing Redevelopment Project area, and to recommend to the City Council of the City of Chicago the designation of Field Building Revitalization Partners, LLC, or a related entity as developer. Ryan Slattery, Emily Thurn, and William Grams will provide a brief description of this request on behalf of the Department of Planning and Development.
So we're actually have Cindy start for us and then I'll jump in.
I'm sorry?
Cindy's gonna start, Cindy Rubik.
Oh,
is gonna
that's
start with
right,
us. I'm
Cindy,
sorry.
you're here. They didn't put you in my.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. All right, Cindy, why don't you introduce yourself for purposes of the minutes, and then we can share your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Butler and CDC Commissioners. For the record, my name is Cindy Chan Rubik, and I'm a Deputy Commissioner with the Department of Planning and Development. Also summarize the overall loop revitalization initiative along the LaSalle corridor. Next slide, please. Thank you. So LaSalle Street today is the historic financial district of the city. It's the center of commercial, economic, and government activity, and it's lined with iconic high-rises. However, this important corridor is experiencing unprecedented levels of vacancy, both in office and retail uses, the highest vacancy rates of all of the downtown submarkets. Next slide, please. LaSalle Street tomorrow, you can move that. transitioning away from its monoculture of office uses into a mix of uses and neighboring neighborhood amenities that go beyond the typical 9 to 5 workday. Public and private investments will address the high vacancy rates to create a welcoming environment rooted in equity and resiliency. How will this be achieved? Next slide. City assistance is targeted to implement 3 goals. First is to support the conversions of underutilized office space to create more housing and including affordable housing. Second goal is to support locally owned cultural and dining businesses via the Small Business Improvement Program. And the third is to create an inviting and forward-thinking street. So next slide, we'll go over the process that we've undertaken, which has been long. You could put it in, thanks. The COVID pandemic in spring of 2020 significantly exacerbated office and retail vacancy rates that had already been challenged by aging older office structures and the rise of e-commerce. The city convened over 150 stakeholders and identified 90 action items in the Central City Recovery Roadmap. These recommendations included repositioning the Loop and its historic financial core to be a more vibrant, inclusive, and mixed-use environment. DPD then sponsored additional studies, which recommended that the city provide financial assistance for mixed income housing uses. The city announced an invitation for proposals in the fall of 2022 for proposed conversions of underutilized office space into residential uses. For consideration of city assistance, a minimum of 30% of the units had to be for affordable households averaging 60% AMI. After evaluating the submitted proposals, the city continued with the underwriting process with selected proposals. And 4 proposals were presented at CDC this past June, and we are here today for a 5th proposal. Each of the redevelopment projects will need to be reviewed and approved by City Council before closing and construction can begin. One of those projects, at 79 West Monroe, was approved by City Council last month, and leasing is expected to start in early 2026. Next slide. This slide outlines the general underwriting process that was undertaken for these adaptive reuse proposals. Budgets were compared to industry standards and precedents, evaluation metrics were defined, other incentive programs were researched and explored, revised submissions were received, and additional analysis was completed. For the proposal at 135 South LaSalle, several changes and improvements were made by the team during this analysis process. The requested TIF assistance was reduced by $17 million. The unit count was also reduced from 430 to 386, and the analysis was broken down by use components, and the development team added a minority-owned developer, DL3, with experience in both retail and affordable housing projects to their development entity. Next slide, please. There are multiple factors driving the funding gaps for these projects. For all projects, conversion costs are high, larger office building footprints are inefficient, costly modifications are often needed for these new uses, and interest rates, as we all know, are the highest they've been in over 20 years. Specific to the LaSalle corridor, many of these older office buildings require significant investments to meet current codes, and several of the buildings are historic, so costs are higher for their appropriate rehabilitation. The 135 South LaSalle project is the largest project of the 5, reactivating over 620,000 square feet compared to the other 4 adaptive reuse projects, which range in size from 100,000 to 770,000 square feet. The next series of slides outlines the community benefits impacts for these 5 adaptive reuse projects collectively. Slide. The pandemic, as I said, significantly increased the office vacancy in the Central Business District. It's at 30.5 million square feet, which totals about 6.8 Willis Towers. The LaSalle corridor itself has about 5 million square feet of vacant office inventory. And these conversion projects will remove over 1.6 million square feet of vacant office space. So that's a significant impact. The next slide, please. Collectively, AECOM has also projected that the 5 projects would generate 5.8 million more per year in property tax revenue post-conversion, which is a 49% increase compared to current property tax revenues. Next slide. Over 1,400 total units will be added to the loop. This helps housing supply keep up with demand and reduces the likelihood of rent increases for market rate units. Note that the downtown community areas has increased has a high increase in residential population over the last 20 years. Next slide. Not just increasing all housing unit types, but also affordable housing units. 434 housing units will be created for households earning 40 to 80% AMI. I want to note that the Loop community area currently only has 32 ARO units built. So this is more than 13-fold increase, and all affordable units will also be type A accessible. Next slide. 4 out of the 5 projects are also historic buildings preserving the character of the corridor. 135 South LaSalle, you'll hear when Ryan speaks, is an individually designated landmark building. Next slide. Collectively, these 5 conversion projects represent over $750 million in total investments. And the projects will need to adhere with the city's minimum minority and women-owned business participation goals, and an estimate of 1,700 construction jobs would be created. Next slide. Adaptively reusing buildings is also very sustainable. It provides significant embodied carbon savings compared to demolition and new construction. And these projects will include energy efficient upgrades to reduce carbon emissions and meet the department's sustainability policy. Next slide. Together with retail investments with the SPIF program and public realm improvements, more people will be downtown after work hours, transitioning to a mixed use environment, and risk is less concentrated by market forces, which means that downtown will become more vibrant and resilient. Now Ryan will present the information for 135 South LaSalle.
Good afternoon, Chair Butler and City Commissioners. For the record, my name is Brian Slattery. I'm a financial planning analyst for the Department of Housing. I'm here today to present 135 South LaSalle projects that is a part of the Loop Revitalization Initiative. Next slide. This project is located at 135 South LaSalle in the 34th Ward, Norman Conways, in the Loop community area and the LaSalle Central. Here we have the neighborhood context for the field building. The property borders Park Street to the east, LaSalle Street to the west, Marble Place to the north, and then Adams to the south. The field building is a 44-story Art Deco style building that was designed by Graham, Anderson, Probst, and White, completed in 1934, and then was designated as a Chicago landmark in 1994. The 1.35 million square foot building has a large floor plates and has over 1.125 million square feet, or approximately 83% of it vacant, mostly due to Bank of America's headquarters relocated at 110 North Watcher Drive. The applicant, Field Building Revitalization Partners LLC, plans an adaptive reuse and conversion, intends to spend $241 million in this project that will convert 361,000 square feet located between levels 5 through 14 into 386 residential units, of which 116 or 30% will be affordable to households with an average income of 60% AMI. The project will also feature residential amenities on levels 5, 25, 43, and 44. They'll include 46,700 square feet of indoor amenities and 24,000 square feet of outdoor amenities. On the lower level, the ground level and level 2, the project will feature 92,000 square feet of commercial space, which is intended to include neighborhood amenities such as small format grocer, health fitness center, medical office, and complementary uses. A parking garage will be located in levels 3 and 4 for up to 177 cars. The per unit development cost is $500,000, and then the annual operating cost is $8,000 per unit. The construction timeline for this project is anticipated to start in July of 2025 and complete in April of 2027. Here we have the breakout of the uses for the building. It includes the commercial shown in pink, the parking lot shown in light green, the residential shown in orange, office use in blue, and then the indoor amenity space shown in tan, and then the outdoor amenity space shown in that darker green. Underwriting is underway for the residential component of the project. Will be completed prior to the full financing, which is we anticipate being brought to City Council early next year. Here's a breakout for the residential component of the project, sources and uses. The sources include owner's equity, loans for the project, a TIF grant, the deferred developer fee, and then historic tax credit equity. As Cindy mentioned earlier, there is a number of factors driving the cost for the projects, including the size of the floor plates, the building size, structural challenges for converting office space to residential, and then the historic preservation of the building. The unit mix includes studio and 2-bedroom units, with 30% of these units being affordable at 40, 50, 60, and 80% AMI. This slide gives you a sense of the anticipated rents. For example, affordable studios will range from $716 to $1,488, with the market rate studios at $2,100. Slide. Here's an example of a typical residential floor plan. As with the residential budget, the commercial budget underwriting is underway as well. Here's an anticipated breakout of the sources and uses. The sources for this will be owner equity, the TIF grant, and then historic tax credits. Next slide. The next 3 slides showcase the retail space programming. Here we have ground level space that would include 22,350 square feet of neighborhood retail and commercial amenities. Next one is 43,200 square feet of neighborhood retail and commercial amenity space located in the lower level arcade. And then finally, we have 26,450 square feet of neighborhood commercial amenity space located on the 2nd floor. The development team is a joint venture between Riverside Investments, AmTrust Realty, and DL3 Realty. The owner is Field Building Revitalization Partners, LLC. The architect is SCB. The attorney is DLA Piper, and then the general contractor and lender is Cillian. Here we have the org chart for Field Building Revitalization Partners, LLC, which is created for this development. Riverside 135 South LaSalle Investors, LLC controls 37.5%. AmTrust SPE also controls 37.5%, and DL3 Field Building Venture, LLC controls 25%. Here's a exterior rendering of the building, which will modify the floors 5 and 25 to allow for exterior amenity space. The structure and requirements for city funds include a 30-year affordability covenant, both through the redevelopment agreement and the inclusionary housing agreement. The TIF disbursement schedule is still under negotiation. Typical construction compliance requirements for prevailing wage and WBE and city residency will apply. The commercial space will include occupancy thresholds, milestones for TIF fund disbursement, and receipt of certificate of completion, as well as ongoing occupancy covenants through the compliance period once the certificate is issued. The community benefits include 116 affordable units for the loop, almost 400 total housing units for this project. All affordable units will be type A accessible. Neighborhood-oriented commercial space, energy-efficient upgrades, indoor and outdoor tenant amenity space, the 26% MBE, 60% WBE, and 893 construction jobs. The recommended action before you stay are to request the authority to negotiate a redevelopment agreement with Field Building Revitalization Partners, LLC, or a related entity for redevelopment of 135 South LaSalle, and designate Field Building Revitalization Partners, LLC, or a related entity as defined. Also, I just want to point out, we have letter of support from Alderman Conway, Chicago Loop Alliance, BOMA, Conservation of Chicago, and Landmarks. We're a part of your original package. We also got additional letters of support today from Central Area Committee, Chicago Central Area Committee, and then the Chicago Architectural Center as well, which Cindy is passing out right now. Thank you for your time today. With Cindy and I today, we also have Jeff Cohen and Billy Grams from DPD Financial Incentives, and we also have the development team from Riverside, AmTrust, and DL3.
Ryan, does that conclude your
It
presentation?
does, sorry, yeah, sorry, yes.
All right, thank you. Just a clarification before I ask for statements and questions, comments from the commission. What is the financial ask today?
The financial ask is $98 million total. There will be two separate budgets though for the redevelopment agreements. There will be a residential component and there will be a commercial component.
And just for purposes of the public record for this meeting, since there's a financial app, what is the breakdown of the 98 million between commercial and residential?
It's 67.5 million for residential and 30.7 million for commercial.
Anticipating that question from the commissioners.
Sorry.
That's all right, no, that's okay. Thank you. At present, I would like to recognize Alderman Conway and invite him to make a statement on the project. Alderman here or anyone from their office?
They did have a lot of support, but fortunately, I agree.
Okay, great. Commissioners,
Can I just make a
Yes.
correction? Sorry, I apologize. It's 67.3 million for residential, not 67.5 million. Sorry. My math is wrong.
that's okay. Fine, thank you for that clarification. Commissioners, do you have questions for the department regarding this request by the Department of Planning and Development? And so, I'm gonna start. Are there any questions at this end of the table?
Yes, just one, Commissioner Curtis. The only question I have is, this is fully a rental building, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, and as such, it will be subject to real estate taxes. Is that correct?
Correct.
That's all I had. Thank you.
Commissioner Zayas? And I'd like to acknowledge that he's here
Great.
for purposes of a quorum. Secretary Chan McKibben?
I have a comment on question. I actually worked in this building, almost 20 years ago, so this, an interesting development here. My question is actually moving forward, there are still additional floors and those will all be office, use and, what are the plans for the office use?
I'm gonna defer to the development team. Wanna be able to talk about
We
the-
go upward. Yeah.
If you think you can hear us, we can hear you from there.
Sure.
You're welcome to stay.
There's no mic
Yeah.
anyway.
I'm Patrick Purdy, I'm Managing Director with AM Trust Realty, the current owner of the property. This is approximately half the building that we're convert to commercial and residential space. Beyond that, we've got a variety of office occupants in the upper mid-rise and high-rise portion of the building. So for the foreseeable future, it will be kept office. However, we will continue to analyze the highest and best use of the property. We've discussed other uses, whether they be hotel type uses or what have you, but really I think let's establish this first phase and reawaken LaSalle Street and hopefully office demand and hotel demand and robust demand in general in the traffic corridor, and we'll continue to assess the highest and best use for the property.
Yeah, thank you. If I remember correctly, there's 66 floors, right?
There are a total of 44.
44. Thank you.
And by the way, your story about people having their first job at the building or have an office in the
Oh,
building.
not my first
We've
job,
heard
but
that.
definitely, not my first job.
Thank you.
It's one that we hear so often and people have emotion. It's really important to us, the development team, to hear that. A lot of people know the building
Yeah.
and really have fond memories of the tower.
When it was a LaSalle Bank building, yes.
I actually have a follow-up question. So the existing office, when you take into consideration the redevelopment, what percentage of the building from a square footage perspective is subject to this $241 million spend, of which the request is 98 million in check? What percentage of the building will be redeveloped?
Very close to 50% of the tower. In total, the building is about 1.3 million rentable office square feet today. We're touching, I think it's 650,000 square feet of the tower. So very large floor plates at the base, much smaller at the top. So less than half the floors, but approximately half of the overall square footage of the tower.
And so are you moving, as a follow-up question, are you moving existing office tenants to the undeveloped part of the building? How does that work?
Sure. This is actually a great candidate for conversion because we've got such a contiguous vacant block of building. Bank of America occupied 800,000 square feet contiguous. So really, we've got the second floor through floor 18 fully vacant at the property today. So we don't have to move a single tenant to convert the space to residential and parking within the building.
Great. I do have follow-up questions that I'm going to ask. Commissioner Boaknight, do you have any questions or comments?
Yeah, it would be good for the development team to share with the commission just your overall timing, to start construction, your timing to close out on other financing, just to get an idea when we'll see this incredible building, rehab and put back in productive use.
Yeah, just to follow on Patrick, I'll start Mike Potter with Riverside Investment and Development, just to follow up on Patrick's comments. Initially, we'll be buying the first half of the building, more or less. We have an agreement with the current lender, who is effectively the seller of this. It went back into their hands more or less after Bank of America vacated and the building has defaulted. So we have an agreement established with them to purchase the property, subject to the approval and receipt of the tax increment financing proceeds that we've requested here. In terms of timing for construction, we've had a little bit of back and forth with Department of Housing. Could be as early as July of next year that we pull construction permits and then start to perhaps do some demolition of the ground floor, make the space more understandable from a marketing and a leasing and financing standpoint. The construction itself for the first units is something in the order of 8 months. There might be a little bit of a phased turnover, but effectively that lines up with spring, let's call it, of 2027. We think that's actually good timing for some other things that are happening on the corridor. For example, Google should be open by then. Some of the other LaSalle Street projects that are surrounding our asset, and we'll be using the retail and the commercial spaces as well. Will hopefully be open, so we're hoping to be current like that. Big part of the basic phase. I'm starting with developing on the base and activating each Chicago, as well as several equity sources that would be interested in doing something like this. So kind of identify a list of groups that are interested. Just a matter of sort of getting on the rails here with the city and getting on a path to obtain the TIF, which will enable us to finance the project. So Riverside and the rest of the team here has significant experience financing projects like this. So we feel confident that it's possible.
Do you have any term sheets in place or letters of interest?
We have not
From
solicited
banks?
term sheets at this time, just because we've been on hold for a little bit, just waiting to get to this point in time here, which we view as the official start. But our next step, literally after this meeting, is to get out into the capital markets, meaning the debt players as well as the equity investors, and follow on the headlines and some of the press that's been out there. We've had a lot of inbound interest and otherwise that we feel confident there's a lot of good momentum here. So we don't have letters of intent at this point in time, but we would seek to get them in fairly short order.
And do you anticipate that any lending term sheets, their terms and conditions would include, or would be contingent upon receiving the $98 million in TIF?
Yeah, I mean,
financing?
the $98 million is what enables all of the financing to come together. And so that's why, we don't have a term sheet in hand. It's really the lending community and the equity investment community. They tell us, hey, when the city's ready and you feel confident that it's worth spending time to, go through the due diligence process and, get the joint ventures and everything set up, then that's when they really dig in. So we have, as a group, I would say, a couple dozen, partners out there that we've identified that are, have been sort of ready and waiting for us to reach this moment in time and come to them and start to establish agreements. So it's really the beginning of the official marketing process now.
Okay, and you're confident that the $98 million in TIF financing will fill the gap from the
Yes,
lender's
yes,
perspective?
Yes. And that specifically was sized, that amount was sized specifically. Really, we think about it as a but for, right? So we have the total project cost. We have an established amount of income that we feel confident in. We also have third-party reports that verify, or at least attempt to, confirm the income that we've underwritten. So then we will have historic tax credits, right? We went out, our approach to the capital markets here and capitalization was to try to use, money except for the TIF, get the TIF down to as little a number as we could. And basically, I know it's still a large number, obviously, but that was the approach, was to get that down to as little an amount as possible so that we could reach a return on the investment that would be adequate to get these lenders and these equity investors on board. So that's really what drives the overall TIF request.
Yeah, I have a few more questions, but I'm going to turn to Commissioner Thomas. Vice Chair, you want me to continue? Yes, please. Okay, so is the parking public?
The parking we really think about it, there's 2 floors. With this initial 386 units, we basically will expect that 1 floor will be for those residential units. And then the lower floor, so level 3, we really think about that as servicing the retail and the commercial uses. That's something that, you know, is vital to actually attract those users to this space. So for example, there's been discussions of a small format grocer. That is a key, we think, aspect of this plan that we'd like to pursue. And a user like that would, you know, surely want some sort of parking dedicated so that their customers, you know, can come to the building and, you know, easily park and then access the store. So that's just an example. So we just sort of think about it that way. But yes, it would be open to the public in that sense.
In that sense, but let me rephrase the question a different way. If someone is not, will vehicles attached to individuals that are not doing business or living in the building be able to park there? Or will it be public in that sense?
So after the initial, like the 4th floor, for example, which is the residential floor, that would be private to the residences. 3rd floor, we establish with DL3, and you guys can jump in as well. But whatever the retail and commercial uses, there'll be some amount that's dedicated to them. And then if there's a remainder of stalls, then we would have that, what we call transient parking, which means that anybody in the vicinity could, you know, get on an app and see that stall and come into the building. So.
Great, thank you. And then hopefully my last question is, who's the managing member of the joint venture? And could you just describe kind of the relationships between the 3 venture partners? I'm curious about how disputes are resolved amongst the partners.
You wanna?
Go ahead, John. Yeah, I'm John O'Donnell, Riverside Investment.
That's why I asked the question.
I'm one of the 3 managing members.
I'm sorry, who is
There are
that?
3 managing members.
She was
Excuse
asking.
me, you have to introduce yourself.
Oh, I'm sorry. John O'Donnell with Riverside Investment Development. And so I'm one of the managing members. We have certain elements that are fully negotiated for the venture that require unanimous consent. Then there's others that require majority consent. So it's kind of a complex thing. And it is one of the most difficult things to do when you have 3 people in a venture, because it does require collaboration. But we've tried to do this in such a way that we work together. There's not one, we have different roles in the development, but each of us is remunerated in the same manner. And so our ownership interest really it evolved to get the best project we can.
Sure.
I don't know if that,
Well, it does. I mean,
there's
we're getting
myself,
there.
there's lots of different dispute
Absolutely. So
mechanisms
just
that.
at a very high level,
Yeah,
can you give a general description of the matters that require unanimous consent? That's the first question. What is, the second is kind of, what constitutes the majority?
Okay.
And then that actually may be, depending upon your answers there, that may be my last question.
well, for the most part, hiring the contractors, hiring the architects, hiring the engineering companies, the 3rd party all require unanimous consent. Financing requires unanimous consent. Sale requires unanimous consent. All the major decisions are unanimous. Now, when you get into certain specifics that we might dispute, I mean, I can't even think of, do you have a good sense of what doesn't require unanimous consent? Believe me, this was fully fleshed out, and I think everybody's comfortable with where we're at. But it's probably 2 pages of the term sheet listing all these. So it's not, I can't tell you off the top of my head. Is that adequate? I mean, it's all major decisions.
I can, go ahead.
Yeah, and I can just add, go ahead.
Yeah, all partners are welcome to speak as long as you introduce yourself before you do.
Good afternoon, Leon Walker, CEO of DLP Realty Advisors and one of the partners in building revitalization department. See, Commissioner and Chair Haddon, Butler, and Commissioner Boatwright, pleased to be here to speak with you today. This is a tripart agreement. We all have some focus, but we're all responsible for the entire building and the entire project. We recognize that we all have strengths, and we've brought those strengths to bear on the project. And I think that from DL3's perspective, downtown is now a neighborhood that requires creativity, requires some thoughtfulness about how do you make it a live, work, play environment. We've done that in a number of neighborhood contexts. And so not only do we bring some thoughtfulness around the retail component and how that integrates not only into the project, but also becomes an anchor for the activation of the South Street corridor, and becomes a benefit and a resource and an amenity for the other projects in the initiative. So in terms of your specific question, we have our percentages. Those percentages translated into economic, involvement and returns and so forth. But outside of that pro rata distribution, we all are working on this project jointly and collaboratively to get it fully financed, fully executed, and to be something we all can be proud of.
Thank you for that. Just a follow-up question. You mentioned DL3's expertise or focus on the retail. Can you just describe the focus of the other partners?
Sure
Each
thing.
of you have a role.
Yeah, again, Leon Walker, DL3 Realty, happy to speak with you today about this exciting project. Riverside brings one of the most experienced and capable institutional partners in the real estate development business here in Chicago, with many prominent addresses being theirs they created. And AmTrust Re has a focus in New York and Chicago, and that focus is around neighborhood creation. They're a portfolio company primarily, but they're also really integrated in terms of their skills. But being a portfolio company, they manage assets across all of these urban markets. And we'll be leaning on them a lot, not only as we go, they have the historical knowledge of the building. We also have great partners and relationships with the lender and others that are involved in this. And they'll be continuing to lease the office component of the building. And so that integration of services and uses and parties that are engaged in the financing and management of the building are very critical. DL3, of course, brings our creativity, expertise, and we, as John was mentioning earlier, we are experienced in working in partnership, not only with other private partners, which it explains the couple of pages he referenced in terms of how we look at things, but that's because we like to start out with a clear understanding of some roles and responsibilities. And even though people may be assigned to one particular task, that is not to mean that others do not get engaged or are not involved. So as you see us here today, we are a unified team, and we've come together around this important asset and decided to participate with the city of Chicago to bring it to a new life.
Great, thank you. This is a question for the development team. Anyone can answer it. Jess, who's the existing lender, and where are you in kind of the process of identifying a contractor?
Sure. Patrick Kearney, Managing Director with the existing lender. It's a CMBS mortgage. So it's basically a pool of bonds, and that was sold off to a variety of investors. It's led by a special servicer in Torchlight, who's the main entity that we're negotiating with, who's servicing the mortgage as a whole, along with a primary note holder within that mortgage trust. So we've been hard at work for over a year and a half at negotiating this deal, which essentially is a purchase, as Mike mentioned, of half the building from essentially the existing lender of the property. So we have a term sheet fully negotiated, a price, timing, a variety of other sort of requirements for release that are fully negotiated and vetted from our perspective to move forward with this deal. They understand what the TIF structure is. We've kept them up to speed at every step. So that deal is basically fully negotiated and ready to be papered, subject to the TIF moving forward.
Okay, and then contractor, where are you in that process?
We've had,
Could you introduce yourself? I'm sorry.
John.
It's just a rule.
Okay. Yeah, well, we've talked to multiple general contractors. It's typical for us to, as we're designing a project, to do preliminary estimates from contractors. We talked to 3 of them, some of the, probably the largest contractors in the city, general contractors. They then get feedback from the subcontractors and give us an estimate that we can then use to try to determine what we think the cost is. But we haven't selected one. I don't say this is at this point.
Sure.
We're negotiating.
Negotiate.
Yeah, so, but, we've used, I think we've done, about 5 million square feet here in Chicago in the last 8 years. We've used the best contractors that we could.
So all the value engineering and everything you've done, the schematics, you're comfortable.
We
that
haven't
this
gone through the
200
detailed drawings.
Right,
We
I
haven't done the
understand that, but
construction
you're
drawings.
comfortable,
We've
and
done-
just speaking to the capital stack, you're comfortable that the 241
Right.
million.
Yes, we're
represents-
comfortable that
okay.
there, it's within a range and we'll negotiate whatever we need to get to that.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Thanks.
Commissioner Thomas.
Thank you.
I should say
Madam
Vice
Chair.
Chair Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and the reason why I allowed you to continue to ask questions because you seem to be asking other questions that I had in mind. But let me go back to the parking slots. I assume you have a grocer in mind, or you're talking with a grocer. You don't have to tell me who that is, because I would assume you're still negotiating. But you're speaking with a grocer. How many slots would you assign to the grocer on that lower level? Or not the number, but the percentage of that floor?
Leon Walker, DO3, with the behalf of the Bill Building Revitalization Partners. The topic of a grocery store has been discussed extensively. And we think that it's a value add, not only to the building, but to the neighborhood. But we all understand what's going on in the grocery business these days. And so grocers are much more hesitant to take on new locations that haven't been proven out with a lot of residential units. And even with the residential units that we're bringing here, plus the ones that are there, this would still be considered a new market, an emerging market for the grocers. That being said, what we're looking to do is, looking at scale and size. And, what does the neighborhood really need to be functioning as a neighborhood? Certainly, you need some access, for a grocer. And we've talked to those that are full service all the way, to the 50, 60,000 square footers, but also some of the smaller grocers that service, condo buildings and other types of that service amenities and other buildings around the market. And so there's interest there. We're also thinking about this retail opportunity as one, not only to service the residents that are coming here and the future uses that we're contemplating, but also how can it be a service and amenity for the workers and other residents that are nearby. One of the things that we've identified as a possible opportunity is the fact that in the central loop here, there is not another full service health club. There's one on Randolph and Michigan Avenue and others in Wacker and West, but nothing in the central loop. So we're going to, at this point, still keep the aperture relatively wide open. Want to be creative, want to think about the uses and how you combine those uses in a way that it provides the highest, sort of amenity set possible.
So as far as the parking slots, you're not able to
So the
put a
parking.
percentage that you.
Yeah, well, I mean, so a typical grocer, in an urban environment, minimally 2 per 1,000, but they usually ask for 4 per 1,000. So if you had a 20,000 square foot grocery, 180 spaces. This, each one of these floors is, what is it? 90, spaces roughly. So a grocer by itself, just even in 20,000 square foot may demand that, but we would negotiate because in an urban environment, you can usually cut it down. But what if we have healthcare uses, for example? Same thing with Health Club. They also are parking, heavy parking users. So we think it's important that this reservation or allocation of spaces is important to attract the users that will be a part of this, but we're gonna be, this is all negotiations. We don't wanna give away that at this juncture. We wanna have the flexibility to discuss with the potential tenants. And then, of course, think about how all the tenants work together and what are the needs, the times of the day, during the day, evening, weekends. There are other considerations to take into account.
Okay, thank you.
You're-
The structure of the LLC, the ownership, you have an operating agreement, and I'm not sure if I'm hearing this right. I'm gonna describe what I think I heard. There are two members of the LLC that own 37.5%, and then one member that owns 25%. But did I hear that each member has the same weighted vote? Or is it by percentage ownership?
I can go. Patrick Kearney, Managing Director of the Interest REIT. Essentially, to John's earlier point, there are a variety of matters that will require all partners to agree. We were very cognizant to limit those such that we wouldn't have a stalemate in any sort of operating instance. So leasing matters and things after the development starts construction are by and large majority. So if you add one of our 37.5 plus the smallest percentage of 25.5 for DL3, it would be a majority approval. So we need 2 of 3 essentially for any operating decision on an ongoing basis. And we really structured the partnership such that we wouldn't run into a stalemate that could stop the progress of the project. It's really signing off on the RDA, signing off on the initial construction financing. That's going to require all partners to agree. We then start construction on an ongoing basis. Really, it falls primarily to a majority decision at that point.
So it is by percentage of ownership?
It is.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
And just as a follow-up, I'm assuming, and correct me if I'm wrong, that kind of your joint venture agreement has kind of the traditional remedies with respect to defaults by the partners, not making capital calls, kind of the industry standard, gold standard remedies that allow the project to move forward despite what might be happening with any individual partner from a financial perspective. Is that correct?
John O'Donnell, that is correct.
Okay. I
It's
figured you
basically
wanna
the
ask
same
that.
one you see in every.
Okay. Other follow-up questions or comments? Okay, commissioners, are we good with questions or comments? Okay, thank you. No written statements from the public were submitted on this matter. If there are no further questions or comments from the commission, I would now like to invite members of the public who are in attendance and interested to speak on this item. Each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes and asked to keep any statements relevant to the request before us, which is for 135 South LaSalle Street. Do we have a sign-up sheet, Bailey?
No, there wasn't a sign-up sheet.
There's not been a sign-up sheet. Yes, please. Hi, Zoe. I'm fine. How are you doing?
I'm well.
Could you introduce yourself?
My name is Zoe Lee.
Okay. I'm sorry.
You can wear it through the microphone. We'll sit over
Oh,
here.
okay. I'm sorry, Miss Dex. So can you come over here?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, how you doing? My name is Zoe Lee. Like I said, I'm always here for the TIF situation because my mother had a building and they unlawfully demolished it on 79th and Halsted. And listening to this, it sounds great, but it's just always the South LaSalle. You were saying DL3, Leon, Mr. Walker, you were saying that this was an urban area, and I guess talking about Go Grocer. My mother lived downtown, so I know about the Go Grocer and all that situation, but what irritates me about the TIF financing and how you guys get all this money, is they always go and get a token black person for the minority. So y'all can get that little 25%, but then when you have people like my mother who was trying to get some TIF money to do her affordable housing in Auburn Grisham, it was a hassle. You know, she had the blueprints. She did everything she was supposed to do. We have a nonprofit. She has her own architect named by the name of Anita, Anita Goyle that does this. And I just always see it's always predominantly men that do this, or they will go get a white woman and you call that a minority. And I just think it just needs to stop. Like, it's a cycle that continues to happen. Hopefully now that we have Trump in office, it may be a little bit different, because I know y'all gonna start with the opportunity zones as well, but we never do any of this in our community. Like, we're going down here to LaSalle Street, South LaSalle Street. Like, do you see the south side and the west side? Do y'all see the south side and the west side? I have to go to another meeting, but I know we have to just stick on here. But even the last one that I really came here for, I got this email that says 747 families were given a legal right to return back to Latham homes, but only 5 families stayed there. The other families are not there, and they have been displaced. That's exactly what happened with Robert Taylor homes. That's exactly what happened with Cabrini Green. Y'all keep pushing us out and displacing us, but y'all are about to put this $98 million situation down here in LaSalle, South LaSalle. Y'all going to always talk about that affordable housing that Black people never get. And it's a cycle. It's a cycle. Stop letting them use you, Mr. Walker. Stop letting them use you for your 25%. Y'all have no idea who y'all are. They were asking you, how do you guys even meet? Y'all don't even know who y'all are. They just need one minority and they came and got you. Stop letting them use you.
Thank you. Are there other comments from the public?
Yes, I would like to say something.
Okay, can you come over here, please? Thank you. Thank you for joining us, and please introduce yourself.
My name is Danielle Carter. I would like to know, how do you all decide who get the affordable, home, apartments in the building?
Actually, this is for
Oh,
statements.
okay, well, I would like to know, how do they filter out who get the affordable, homes or the apartment units in the building? And I also would like to know, will these apartments be only for legal citizens, not illegal immigrants that just came here?
Okay, so I'm gonna, are those your 2 questions?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. I'm gonna have the Department of Planning and Development answer those questions.
Sure, so there's an application process for the affordable units. So when they come online, you can go ahead and fill out the affordable application through that process. I'm not sure about if it's legal or illegal immigrants are allowed. I'm not sure of the application for that.
I think that would be important because we have maybe 50,000 illegals here. And we would like to know that these affordable apartments will go to people who paid in this tax system and are legal citizens, and not to legal citizens, because we know that they are being put in our neighborhoods and things like that. So we would like to know under the umbrella of affordable homes. So, and they're all downtown. So I would like to, so how can we figure that out if illegal citizens, or would it be American citizens or Chicago citizens that are legal would get these units?
Can I, sorry, I cut you off. Can I just respond? Because I want to make sure you get the questions answered.
Mhm.
So what I'm suggesting is that we pose that question to the Department of Housing. And at the beginning of next month's meeting, we'll have a statement that I will read as part of the public record answering that question.
Okay, so you said the
Department of
meeting-
Housing, I'm sorry.
You said the meeting with the Department of Housing.
Well, no, we're gonna ask the Department of Housing to answer that question, to
Mhm.
provide a statement, which I will read into the record at the beginning of the December meeting.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Because I don't think, and none of us here can answer that question for you, so we want to make sure that question gets answered.
Okay, thank you.
Is that acceptable?
Yes, that's acceptable.
Okay.
Okay, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other questions or comments from members of the public? If there are no further questions or comments regarding the matter before us, I will call this item to a vote. The resolution before us, the Department of Planning and Development is seeking authority to negotiate a redevelopment agreement with Field Building Revitalization Partners LLC or a related entity for redevelopment of the property located at 135 South LaSalle Street in the LaSalle Central Tax Increment Financing redevelopment project area, and to recommend to the City Council of the City of Chicago the designation of Field Building Revitalization Partners LLC or a related entity as developer. If there are no objections or abstentions, I move passage of this item by the same roll call vote previously used to establish quorum. Are there any objections or abstentions? Hearing none, the motion is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, for the next item of new business on today's agenda, can I ask you guys just to exit quietly, please? Thank you. Commissioners, for the next item of new business on today's agenda, the Department of Housing is seeking authority to negotiate a redevelopment agreement with Franciscan Outreach for redevelopment of the property located at 2508 through 38 West 21st Street in the Western Ogden Tax Increment Financing redevelopment project area, and to recommend to the City Council of the City of Chicago the designation of Franciscan Outreach as developer. Meredith Muir will provide a brief description of this request on behalf of the Department of Housing.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair and Commissioners. For the record, my name is Meredith Muir. I'm Chicago Recovery Plan Program Manager with the Department of Housing. I'm presenting today to the Community Development Commission for a DOH-funded project at 2508 through 38 West 21st Street in the 25th Ward to be redeveloped with funding support from the Western Ogden TIF as a non-congregate shelter by Franciscan Outreach. Next slide. The property in question is located at 2508 through 2538 West 21st Street in the 25th Ward. This is in the South Lawndale community area, close to the borders of both the Lower West Side and North Lawndale. This property is located in the Western Ogden TIF and the West Planning Region. Next slide. As you can see from the map, the property in question is close to the juncture of several train lines, including the CTA Pink Line and a commercial train line running north-south just west of Western Avenue. The property is a former industrial building, is now primarily vacant, and sits amid a commercial and industrial corridor with neighborhoods to the east and the west. Directly adjacent to the property is New Vision Church to the west, a commercial building with a grocery store and fitness center to the south, and the aforementioned train lines to the north and the east. And to note, there is an active encampment under the 21st Street train viaduct directly to the east of the property. On this slide, you'll see a photo of the property. It's made up of 4 connected 1- and 2-story buildings. The buildings pictured here are vacant. Only the furthest west building of the property is temporarily leased to a film studio. Next slide. The applicant in question is Franciscan Outreach, who is represented today by Rebrett Simpson, the executive director, Luana Johnson, the director of programs and operations, and their partner, Jason Brown, who is with Eagle Capital Project as their owner's representative. In partnership with DOH, Franciscan seeks to redevelop the site in question as a non-congregate shelter. Leveraging both DOH grant funds and Western Ogden TIF funds, the applicant will acquire and complete adaptive reuse renovations for the building to serve as a 120-bed shelter with supportive services for people experiencing homelessness. The applicant is seeking up to $15 million in TIF funds to support the total project cost of $25.5 million. They are seeking to acquire the property by March of 2025 and expect construction to take approximately 12 months with site implementation planned for March of 2026. Next slide. The development team is listed here. The owner and developer is Franciscan Outreach. Their owner's representative is Eagle Capital Project. Their architect is LBBA. Their general contractor is planned to be Walsh Construction. Their general counsel is Nixon Peabody LLP. Next slide. So the underwriting for the project is underway. This will be finalized before city council intro next year. But the expected sources and uses are shown here, including funding that the grantee partner is bringing as equity through both philanthropic support and other funding sources. The TIF request we're here today for, along with funding from DOH's Chicago Recovery Plan funds to make up the sort of total sources. The uses include acquisition of the property, hard construction costs, and associated soft construction costs. Next slide. And I'll just say quickly that the construction costs are driven primarily by the substantial interior build out of the property because it's a former industrial building, large sort of box spaces that are going to be completely built out into non-congregate units, which you'll see in the upcoming slides. So just to speak to the construction costs. So the project intends to leverage TIF funds along with the Department of Housing's CRP STST bonds funds to support the project. Funds are expected to be placed into escrow upon acquisition and dispersed over the course of construction. Anticipated but not finalized disbursement milestones are shown here. The project will comply with typical construction requirements, including prevailing wage, the minority and women-owned businesses requirements, and city residency. So this is the elevations of the property, and I'll talk this through quickly, starting at the easternmost building, which is the large blue building at the bottom. This building, the two-story portion of the property, will be redeveloped into non-congregate shelter for 84 residents with dormitory-style sleeping units that have shared bathrooms between groups of 2, 3, and 4 sleeping units. This space will also have a dining area, community space, laundry, and rooms and space for case management. The next adjacent building, which is shown in green on the top row, will be the primary entry to the building with intake space and staff offices for case management and building management. The purple building will hold the property's kitchen to provide resident meals and also has space for an additional 36 beds of congregate flex shelter, which allows for Franciscan to continue to accept walk-ups and operate as a low barrier shelter. The furthest west building, shown in peach, is an additional services space being developed to allow for outside partner organizations, including medical professionals and other providers bringing essential services, to be able to meet with residents. Next slide. This is the floor plan. I know there's a lot of detail here. In summary, the sleeping areas are shown in purple and red. There's also an isolation room in green for health safety. The resident shared spaces are in blue and light yellow. The staff and client provider spaces are in darker yellow. There's a second story only on the farthest east building, and that has additional non-congregate sleeping rooms. Slide. So in summary, DOH is requesting you authorize us to negotiate a redevelopment agreement with Franciscan Outreach to redevelop 2508 through 38 West 21st Street as non-congregate shelter, utilizing up to $15 million in funding from the Western Ogden TIF redevelopment project area, and to designate Franciscan Outreach as developer. Thank you. We're happy to answer any questions. This concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Meredith. If present, I would like to recognize Alderman Cicho Reyes and invite them to make a statement on the project. Is there anyone in here, anyone from their office?
I don't believe so. In the staff report, and I apologize, I don't have printouts for you. We have letters of support from Alder Cicho Lopez, as well as from Alderman Urban and Alder Scott, who are in the adjacent areas.
Thank you. Commissioners, do you have any questions for Meredith Muir regarding this request by the Department of Housing? Secretary?
Do you want to go? Oh,
That's, I'm going opposite, I'm going opposite way now.
yeah, okay. You mentioned that it's an old industrial building. What was it before and were all the environmental inspections and everything already?
I will let the owners rep team speak to that, but briefly from the city's perspective, with all of our projects, we require a phase 1 environmental, a phase 2 environmental, and if required, enrollment into SRP. I believe most of those steps have been completed, but Jason can speak to more of that.
Thank you.
My name is Jason Brown. I'm the owner's rep. Eagle Capital Projects LLC is my company. Yeah, I'll just reiterate what my rep has just said. The phase 1 environmental site assessment and phase 2 environmental site assessment. We are in the process of, or have just recently enrolled in the Illinois EPA state remediation program. And we also have a series of hazardous material assessments that have identified the presence of limited hazardous materials, and the remediation of that will be included in the construction contract.
Thank you. What was the industry that was? What was the?
It's been there for over
I know
100
there's been
years,
people-
and it's been, I think it has had a variety of uses over those 100 years. And I don't know that we have any more detail about that, do we?
The base zoning is M1-3, which is a lighter manufacturing district compared to others, but
How long has the building been vacant?
quite some time. Any
Been mostly vacant for a while. It's been intermittently occupied. As Meredith said earlier, there's a film studio in there now. There was a leased manufacturing space until very recently, but that lease is recently just expired. But the bulk of the facility has been vacant for, I would say, years.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Sayers.
Yes, is this shelter gonna be part of the all-in-one shelter that the city's developing?
Robert, you want to speak to the shelter operations?
My name is Roberta Simpson, I'm the executive director of. And so the shelter, all shelters are being kind of pulled into the all-in-one system. Our current process is to operate as our normal shelters, which we're low barrier, meaning we have 0 barriers to entry as long as you're homeless, and we accept referrals from the Department of Family Support System. But as a City of Chicago funded agency that provides shelter, we are part of that initiative and process.
Follow-up question, Commissioner Sayers?
That's it.
Okay, Commissioner Curtis?
Thank you. Obviously, it's a project that's needed and important. Can you help me understand, though, how it will generate increments to support the TIF?
Yeah, so this project is to provide shelter, and so this is a nonprofit operator. It is not necessarily an income generating organization. However, we believe and have data that backs up that when people are appropriately receiving services and getting placed into housing from shelter that is dignified and meets their needs, they are drawing less on other city funded services that exist, and especially places like emergency departments and other areas. And so though it is not necessarily generating in the way that we traditionally see with other TIF funded projects, we believe this is a net benefit and will be an asset to the neighborhood.
I do have a follow-up question, Vince. So with the shelter, you receive a client that comes in. Is there a system to work their way from poverty to sustainability? Are you working ways when clients come into the facility? It's not a shelter that's ongoing for one person that's continued coming there for years. Are you working a process where they become more stabilized?
Yes, I apologize.
I love it. Roberta Simpson, executive director of. So our process.
Sorry, he can't hear you. Can you, we might come over here. Thank you.
I gave it to you. Yes.
Shall further or this way?
Just come all
Is
the way
this
down.
okay if I stand here?
Okay, just project your voice. Thank you so much.
Roberta Simpson, I'm the executive director of Franciscan Outreach. And our process in working with all our clients include connecting them with case management and then other community resources. We try not to be everything for everyone. Our main focus is in providing a dignified space where people can recover from trauma. Part of this and what makes this slightly unique is that we will have communities partner space slightly separate from our regular space, with the idea of working with people outside of where they sleep and rest, so that they get into the habit of engaging with other community partners. And so in that tan space that she mentioned initially, We have different partners that come from employment, medical, mental health, and substance abuse. And so we provide all of those services. And what we find is by connecting them to resources that they can also get, once they're out of our building, they keep more sustainability in moving forward toward, you know, being more profitable, so to speak, but having employment and things of that nature.
I'll add as well that the city's goal in establishing more of our shelter system in a non-congregate setting is to build on the learnings from a study conducted at a hotel where people who were experiencing homelessness stayed during the COVID-19 pandemic. And they learned through people staying at that hotel and the study conducted that not only people's health outcomes improved, physical measures of health, their engagement to services improved, and their transition to long-term housing was improved upon the traditional and more congregate shelter method. And so we believe that this style of shelter, where people have their own place to stay, their own door to close, helps people to engage better and helps them to make that transition out of shelter into permanent housing and back into, you know, employment and what they need in their life from that place.
Any additional questions or comments from the Vice Chair Thomas?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm confused on how the homeless population is selected. Is it through the Department of Housing, your city, or is it walk-ins?
Luana Johnson. I am the Director of Programs and Operations for Franciscan Outreach. And so what happens is our guests, our clients are connected through 311. And so a person can contact 311 and just simply state that they're homeless. And then we have like this whole system where they will find if there is space in the city. So say, for example, if we have available space, they'll contact us, that person will come to us. We will do an intake on site, and then all of the other services will be connected with a case manager.
And we'll continue to accept walk-ups as well.
And we will continue to accept walk-ups. So we will have a section that is non-congregate, as they mentioned, behind closed doors, their individual space, but we will also still have the non-congregate space where people can walk up. So for example, as they mentioned, the encampment population that actually sits right next to us, if any of those individuals desire to come indoors, they can just walk up, receive an intake, and we will accept them.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can you go back to the slide of sources and uses? Okay, so the environmental remediation, there's no
It's built into the hard cost, expected cost at the moment.
Okay.
Thanks for that clarifying question.
Okay, because it shouldn't say zero at all. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Commissioners. No written statements from the public were submitted on this matter. If there are no further questions from the Commission, I would now like to invite members of the public who are in attendance and interested to speak on this item. Each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes and asked to keep any statements relevant to the request before us. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak? If there are no further questions or comments regarding the matter before us, I will call this item to a vote. The resolution before us, the Department of Housing is seeking authority to negotiate a redevelopment agreement with Franciscan Outreach for redevelopment of the property located at 2508 through 38 West 21st Street in the Western Ogden Tax Increment Financing Redevelopment Project area, and to recommend to the City Council of the City of Chicago the designation of Franciscan Outreach as developer. If there are no objections or abstentions, I move passage of this item by the same roll call vote previously used to establish quorum. Are there any objections or abstentions? Hearing none, the motion is approved. Commissioners, for the last item of new business on today's agenda, the Department of Housing is seeking authority to negotiate a redevelopment agreement with Lathrop Preservation IC LP for redevelopment of the properties described within the provided staff report located in the Diversey Chicago River Tax Increment Financing redevelopment project area, and to recommend to the City Council of the City of Chicago the designation of Lathrop Preservation ICLP as developer. Anna Booth will provide a brief description of this request on behalf of the Department of Housing.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman Butler and
Good
members of,
afternoon, Ann.
and members of the commission. For the record, my name is Anna Booth from the Department of Housing. Joining me today is Senior Vice President from Related Midwest, Sarah Wick, and Senior Development Associate Shreya Singh. And from the CHA, we have Deputy Chief of Development Lee Prater and Project Manager for the Lathrop Homes Development, Anthony Alvarez. Next slide. As Chairwoman Butler stated, the proposed project before you requests the authority to designate Lathrop Preservation 1C LP as developer for the redevelopment of property located in the Diversey Chicago River Tax Increment Finance Redevelopment Project area. Next slide. Lathrop Preservation is located on the north side, generally at Diversey Parkway and Damon Avenue. Due to its size and location of the scattered sites, portions of the development are located in Lakeview, which is the north side of Diversey, and portions are located in Lincoln Park, which is the south side of Diversey. The entire development is located in the 32nd Ward, and the alderman is Scott Wagasback. Next slide. Lathrop is a CHA Plan 4 transaction, and it's a combination of new and rehab construction in a landmark registered district that has been reviewed and approved by the National Park Service and State Historic Preservation Office, and was added to the National Register of Historic Places on February 12th of 2012. Phases 1 and 2 were completed in 2019 and 2023 respectively, and returned 488 mixed income rental units, restoration of the Great Lawn, and the restoration of the Riverwalk. Phase 1C is the third phase and will focus on the south side of Diversey Parkway. It will be comprised of a new construction of one elevator building that will house 59 units, rehabilitation of 7 buildings that will house 250 units, the demolition of 3 existing buildings, and the structural repair of the powerhouse. Other amenities will include landscape courtyards, community space, and approximately 100 off-street parking spaces. The powerhouse's smokestack will be repointed and rebuilt, and the interior will be built out as a gray box that can be built out by a future tenant once identified. Renovation of the powerhouse is critical to the developer securing the maximum historic tax credits required for this transaction. Next slide, please. So slide 5 and 6 of the 309 units, 213 or 69% will be available to CHA and affordable households at the 30% to 80% area median income levels. And of those 213 units, 121 will rent to CHA individuals and families. Upon completion of the phase, there will be 24 studios, 169 ones, 106 twos, and 10 3-bedroom units. Further breakdown of the units, you can go to the next slide, shows that 57 will rent to tenants at the 30% area median income levels, 93 at the 60% area median income levels, and 63 at the 80% area median income levels. The remaining 96 units will rent to market rate households. Square footages will be approximately 454 square feet for studios, 652 square feet for ones, 838 square feet for twos, and 1,198 square feet for 3-bedroom apartments. The CHA units will be broken out to include 54 ones, 62s, and 7 3-bedroom apartments. Slide 7, please. The developers for Lathrop Preservation are Related Midwest and Bickerdike Redevelopment Corporation. The CHA chose this team as the master developer for Lathrop Homes from a request for qualifications that was issued in 2010. It should be noted that when it was chosen, there were 3 entities that comprised the joint venture development team. The third entity was in the ownership structure for phases 1 and 2, but is currently in the process of dissolution of the business. And so the master development agreement has been revised accordingly. Related Midwest has 50 years of experience in development and preservation and currently owns and manages approximately 55,000 affordable and workforce housing apartments and homes throughout the United States. Bickerdike has completed over 15 projects, producing approximately 1,100 affordable family units in and around the Northwest communities of Chicago. Next slide. This is the current org chart, which is similar to what was used for the earlier phases. It's just taking away that third entity that I just spoke about. Next slide. For this phase, the developers worked with architects BKL, Harley Ellis Devereaux, and Arta Design, which is formerly Bauer Latosa Studio. Arta Design is a minority business enterprise-led firm that specializes in architecture, restoration, and planning with a focus on existing buildings. Property manager will be Related Management Company, and the attorney firm is DLA Piper. Merchants Capital is the proposed permanent first lender. As is DOH policy, a minimum of 3 general contractor bids are required prior to identifying a general contractor. And a third-party cost estimator report is also required to help prove up and identify costs. The development team is in the process of bidding the project and is also negotiating with vendors and syndicators for the benefit of this phase. And so those entities will be named at a later time. Next slide. The proposed total development costs are over $202 million and will be financed with multiple sources. The city will issue up to $100 million in tax-exempt bonds, and those bonds will generate 4% low-income housing tax credits, which will generate approximately $37,685,000 of equity for the benefit of the transaction. The city will also provide a portion of Illinois Affordable Housing Tax Credits, also known as donation tax credits. These credits will raise equity of $8,280,000 for the transaction as well. The donation tax credits are based off the value of the CHA land and discounted to 50% of that value, which are then sold to generate the equity for the benefit of the transaction. TIF dollars of $25 million will represent 12% of the financing and will be used to pay for or reimburse the developer for TIF eligible project costs. Up to $21.5 million of TIF will be ported from the Addison South TIF and come from area-wide increment. It is anticipated the TIF will be funded in 3 installments of $8,333,000, with 2 being funded during construction and 1 payment at certificate of completion. The TIF will be bridged with the loan as no TIF funds will be made available at closing. The use of, as well as the porting of TIF was reviewed and approved by the City of Chicago's TIF Investment Committee in June and October of this year. There will be a first mortgage of approximately $47 million, accounting for 23% of the total development costs, and the loan will carry a market interest rate and 40-year amortization period. Lathrop will also receive state and federal historic tax credits, which will raise $1,447,491 and $21,274,832 of equity respectively for the benefit of the transaction. CHA will provide loan funds of $37 million, which accounts for 18% of total development costs. And then other funding sources will consist of CARM-Ed grant funds and deferred developer fee. The per unit cost of $655,648, although they are still somewhat high, they are slightly lower than what we've seen on past multifamily developments. And this phase does have larger economies of scale, which helps with the cost. However, the passage of time, the financing costs, remediation and utility costs, high interest rates, and labor costs are all contributing factors to development costs remaining high for these multi-layered, multi-financed transactions. Next slide. So this slide is an aerial view of Lathrop Preservation. Damon Avenue is to the east, the Chicago River is to the west and south, and Diversity Parkway is the North Street. The area, next slide. The area shaded in fuchsia comprises phases 1 and 2, which are complete. The building shaded in yellow is the senior building and is not a part of this phase of development. And then the dotted area comprises this phase of Lathrop. Next slide. Makeup of this phase of development. So what you can see on this slide is where the parking will be. There's going to be one parking lot kind of on the north end of the site, and then the second parking lot on the south end. You see the green space also, one on the north end and one on the south end, and then the building surrounding it. Next slide, please. This is a rendering of the rehab buildings that sits on the north side of Diversey and how the rehab buildings on the south side of Diversey will look. Next slide. And this is a rendering of the newly constructed building that was constructed in phase 1 of construction. And this phase of, this new building and this phase of construction will mirror that building some way. Next slide. This slide is just the proposed unit layouts for the phase. And the next slide is also unit layouts. Next slide, please. So community engagement. The development team communicates with the Alderman's office regularly, and on the last Wednesday of every month, the CHA convenes a working group meeting. The working group is comprised of individuals from the development team, resident association, community stakeholders, and representation from Alderman Waguespack's office. Next slide. Here are Lathrop's public benefits. They're listed here, and the development will achieve 100 points in Chicago sustainability by incorporating environmental features, most that are listed here. Additionally, the development team will achieve a minimum 26.6 MWBE participation and will comply with city residency and prevailing wage requirements. This phase will also add 9 permanent jobs, which will consist of 2 asset management recertification specialists, 3 maintenance, 3 janitor porter positions, and 1 administrative assistant. The temporary construction jobs are still to be determined pending the selection of the general contractor. So in conclusion, the proposed project is located in the Diversey Chicago River TIF redevelopment project area, and the project conforms to the plan's stated goals and the plan's land use map, which calls for residential, institutional, and commercial redevelopment. The Department of Housing has thoroughly reviewed the proposed project, the qualifications of the development team, the financial structure of the project, its need for public assistance, its public benefits, and the project's conformance with the redevelopment area plan. And the Department of Housing recommends that the CDC recommend to the City Council of the City of Chicago the designation of Lathrop Preservation 1C LP as developer for the development of the new construction of 1 elevator building that will house 59 mixed income rental units, rehabilitation of 7 buildings that will house 250 mixed income rental units, demolition of 3 existing buildings, and the rehabilitation of the powerhouse to be located at 2740 North Hoyne, 2731 to 2759 North Levitt / 2039 to 2049 West Diversey, 2750 to 2768 North Hoyne / 2029 to 2035 West Diversey, 2633 to 2667 North Hoyne, 2601 to 2631 North Hoyne, 2600 to 2618 North Hoyne, 2628 to 2662 North Hoyne, 2664 to 2704 North Hoyne, 2742 to 2748 North Hoyne, 2706 to 2740 North Hoyne, 2602 to 2626 North Hoyne, and 2567 North Hoyne in the Diversey Chicago River TIF redevelopment project area. Alderman Waguespack is very supportive of this transaction and has provided, a support letter. And again, additionally, we have members of the development team in attendance with us today, ready to answer any questions you may have. And we also have representatives from the CHA in attendance to answer any questions you may have as well. Thank you for your time, and this concludes my presentation.
Thank you so much, Anna. Is the alderman or anyone from their office here?
They are not, they are in budget hearings. He wanted to come, but
Okay, that's
tied
fine.
up, so.
Budget hearings are important. Commissioners, do you have any questions for Anna Booth regarding this request by the Department of Housing? Yes, Commissioner Curtis.
Thank you. Thank you for acknowledging the cost per unit. Is that because that is that high because of the rehabilitation of the current Lathrop project?
So since the pandemic, costs have been high. They have come down. About a year ago, we were seeing costs at the 800, 900,000 mark. So we have come down, but they are still high. With these multi-layered, multi-finance developments, just the passage of time, a general contractor can only hold their pricing for so long, and then when it adjusts, it's going to adjust up. Utility costs are high. Remediation, what you originally thought was going to be the remediation costs, as they get on site and into it, is going to cost more. So it's just a layer of costs that go up over time that is going to make the total development costs go up across the board. This one is, like I said, slightly lower because we have larger economies of scale on this one. It's going to be 309 units, whereas, on some of our smaller developments, you see 78, 80 units, and we're at 800,000, 900,000.
Thank you. Just one more question. We think that this is the most number of units that we can provide, the amount that we are investing, whether it's here or someplace else. I guess my thought is just making sure that we're not providing units for a lucky few, and instead providing the most number of units possible.
So this is one of the larger developments where we've provided a lot of units. Phase 1, 414 units were provided. This phase, 309 units are provided. You typically can't see very many developers bringing that many units at one time in one phase. So we've been really lucky with this one, that they were able to bring so many phases in phase 1 and now, so many units in phase 1 and now in this phase.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Additional questions?
No, that's all.
Okay,
Thank you.
Secretary Chan-McKibben.
I was curious about the 7 buildings that are rehabilitated. Will they have elevators as well?
No, those are totally rehabilitated, so those are walk-ups.
How many floors?
There are 2 stories and 3-story walk-ups.
Additional questions, Secretary Chan-McKibben? Thank you. Any additional questions or comments? Thank you, commissioners. No written statements from the public were submitted on this matter. If there are no further questions from the commission, I would now like to invite members of the public who are in attendance and interested to speak on this item. Each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes and asked to keep any statements relevant to the request before us. Are there any members of the public that wish to speak? If there are no further questions or comments regarding the matter before us, I will call this item to a vote. The resolution before us, the Department of Housing is seeking authority to negotiate a redevelopment agreement with Lathrop Preservation IC LP for redevelopment of the properties located within the provided staff report located in the Diversey Chicago River Tax Increment Financing Redevelopment Project area, and to recommend to the City Council of the City of Chicago the designation of Lathrop Preservation IC LP as developer. If there are no objections or abstentions, I move passage of this item by the same roll call vote previously used to establish quorum. Vice Chair Thomas is recusing from this vote. Are there any additional recusals or objections? Hearing none, the motion is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, that was our last item on today's agenda. If there are no further questions or comments, I move to adjourn the November 12th, 2024 meeting of the Community Development Commission by the same roll call vote previously used to establish quorum. Hearing none, we are adjourned.